Hello, world. What separated your deep ball from everybody else?
My deep ball, it has a little secret sauce to it, man.
Never get too high, never get too low, but just keep moving.
The whole story is Carlos never beat me in any kind of sports in high school.
Welcome to the Orange is the New Black podcast. I'm your host, Ace Boogie, joined by my co-host, Zim. Zim, say what's up.
What's going on? How y'all doing this evening? I hope you all can hear me very clear. I'm ready to do this, ready to rock and roll. How you doing this evening?
I'm good, bro. As you guys know, the NFL Combine is going right now. We had wide receivers, tight ends yesterday with the quarterbacks. Today, we have a lot of the offensive linemen going. So I know a lot of Bengals fans, if you're not catching this live, it might be because, or if you're listening to this the next day, it's probably because you were knee deep in that draft content. But today we're going to talk about the Combine for the most part. And like we kind of talked about the big boys, and it's a very special position for us, right? Because coming off of the Super Bowl performance, everybody was talking about Bengals D O-line, Bengals D O-line. We kind of talked about some free agent and trade kind of targets last show. This show we'll kind of dive in a little bit to some of those offensive linemen. So one of the things that I kind of have put together for this show is just kind of looking at guys and guys that I think just based off of data that the Bengals could be interested in. So the first thing is guard, right? Like everybody's talked about right guard. When you look at the Bengals from an average age aspect, they look for guards that are generally like 22 to 23 years old. The average is really 23, right? You talk about the weight, that averages out at 311 pounds. The minimum that they've had, the smallest guard that they've ever drafted, period, since Duke Tobin's been there, 297 pounds. The biggest guard, believe it or not, is the one that they took last year in Jackson Carman at 330 pounds. When you talk about the height, the average is generally around 6'5", but you've seen them draft them anywhere from 6'3" to 6'7". And so the other aspect of this is like what conference did they play in, right? They had 4 from the Pac-12, 2 from the SEC, 2 from the Big Ten. And I just put together some guys that kind of match what they're looking for from that aspect. And with this draft, like who would be that? Kennard is a guy. I don't know if is it Kennard or Kennard?
I always say Kennard.
Kennard is a guy out of that mode. He's got a 90.6 PFF score. He's comparable, if you're not aware of what his game style is like, because he's our lineman. He's kind of comparable to Cody Ford or Deontay Brown. He's kind of out of that mode, right? But some of these guys that might be listed as tackles and stuff like that, I generally go by what the Bengals would kind of use them as. So you're going to see multiple of these guys in multiple spots. Linderbaum, believe it or not, is kind of a fit for what they like at the guard size and position as well. Go ahead.
Let me ask you about Zion Johnson, because he just ran earlier today. I was pretty impressed with him for the most part. A lot of people bring him up a lot. He meets a lot of the different, things that I look for in a guard. He's at 6'2", he's 314 pounds, right at that threshold. I think you just mentioned 11 or something like that.
Yeah, it was 311 is the average.
Okay, he's got the arm length at 33 and 7/8. You might as well say 34-inch arms, which is good. Hand at 10 and 7/8. That's one. And as far as like his 40 time that he ran 5.1, which isn't crazy fast or whatever. It's good. It's good for him. You know, it's good. It's good for a guard, like, period. Like, we saw a guy. I don't know. Did y'all see Cross run? I posted him earlier today. He ran a 4.9, bro, at 300.
Cross is a dude that I have for Bengals standards. He would be a tackle for them. So Cross is definitely on that list. And like you said, he was big and ran. What were you gonna say his 40 time was for people that are unaware?
It was a 4.95.
That's crazy.
For a 300 something pound man, like that's insane.
That is insane. You got Kellen Deesh that ran a 4.89. Trevor Penning, who a lot of Bengals fans like as well, ran a 4.9 as well.
Deesh is a guy that gets mocked to the Bengals a lot in like the third. I don't know if now that faster 40, I don't know. Typically, that doesn't make them move up crazy unless they run a crazy number.
But one of the things I was listening to, I think it was Locked On NFL Draft, there isn't a correlation for 40 time for receivers, right? There isn't really many positions that have a correlation to how successful they're going to be. But believe it or not, there is a correlation for linemen in their 40 times. And the ones that you're talking about, like I think they said Trent Williams ran a 4.8. Generally, if you run in that 4.8, 4.9, generally there's a strong correlation that kind of says you will be a successful lineman in the NFL, which is kind of crazy because most people put that stock on like your skill positions, right? Like corner, wide receiver, but it's really the trenches where that kind of shows. Now, not necessarily for defensive linemen because they kind of went with like the 10-yard split as really having that correlation. But I was surprised to hear that for offensive linemen, that 40 time is really important.
Right. Some of the other guys I know that stand out, I don't know if any guys will fall to us, but I was kind of, I had it on my TV at I don't want to incorrectly pronounce his name, but Ikem Ekwunu for NC State. He had a pretty impressive showing earlier. Tyler Linderbaum is a guy that isn't going to test, that the Bengals should be keeping their eye on. There are some people that have him mocked as early as 15, 16. I feel like with all of the talk of the Bengals going free agency with the Pac-Man report saying that Jensen's going to, not a report, but him actually just saying it, that Jensen is 3 years, $39 million. It still doesn't take away the fact that Linderbaum, to me, if he's there at 31, you still just draft him because you could work with him. Some of the things that might come up, though, are the arm length, though, if you're thinking about playing him at guard or something like that. So I think that if you get Jensen, then you kind of pivot over to the defense. Evan,
yeah, he could potentially play guard, though, depending upon, like, that's what they have him down here. The interesting thing was he was more of a match for guard for the Bengals, at least, than he was at center, which I thought was pretty interesting because I'm not sure how tall he is, but some of the guys that are like they don't take centers over 6'4". Like you got to be 6'3" or 6'4". Like they're weird in particular with that, but they have more of, and I think he might be 6'5". So like they might put him potentially at guard, and the comp that they gave for him was Jason Kelce. So if you're at home and you don't know much about him, one of the comps for him was Jason Kelce. But continue your thoughts about Linderbaum.
Linderbaum, I just think he's a stud, man. I feel like a lot of people worry about him against the AFC North, but one of the things that I've noticed that, because that is the one guy that I watch more than anybody. One of the things that, because I don't know if it's his wrestling background, his balance is he's incredibly balanced with all of his techniques. He's always centered. He has a good punch. There are different things that you're looking for. And then the other thing that stands out to me is a lot of times he's blocking and then he's looking for another man. Generally, like when I see like centers or any guard or whatever, that are generally like they'll get on their block, they'll come off of it, or they'll stay on it, and you'll see that on tape. They're still kind of wrestling with a guy. Usually when you finish a guy off and then you're looking for more work is what we generally, like, that's what I call it, looking for more work.
Is that a glass eater? Is that a glass eater?
I don't like people talking about all this glass eating. Like we'll get to that guy. Falele, I think that's the guy that I think they were saying was eating glass. He's a bit of a project, but if that was the second round pick, I would go crazy over it. If it was the 31st pick, I'd be very upset because that's a project. And as we're talking about, I thought it was good on the episode that we just had 2 days ago to talk about our philosophy on like, what are you thinking? What's the plan coming into the draft? That doesn't mean that you're trying to come into the draft and just say, oh, I want that. I got to get 2 offensive line right here. Like, but you do need to have some kind of concise plan to say, this is what I intend to do. And that's where the Linderbaum conversation kind of gets kind of weird to me, because if you do get Jensen, then I feel like the limitations on Linderbaum will probably take him off your board. But at the same time, if he was there at 31, he's just really good. He's always looking for work.
If you put Jensen at center,
right,
you could play him at guard. You could play Linderbaum at guard.
And see, but that's the thing. Even with him, the reason why he's a center to me is because of the arm length. It's the reason why I wouldn't want him at guard. And then Jensen, you wouldn't pay him coming off of all of those years to now come play guard just because you went and drafted a center. So it's just a complicated thing. And then keep this in mind: by you doing these moves, that means that you're cutting Trey Hopkins. They're not going to restructure him. They don't see Trey Hopkins as a starting guard for their team, and his cap hit is $6 million. So you wouldn't even have him. You couldn't even have him on the bench. Right. But if they go the center route with Jensen, then they come to the draft, then they say we're not looking at Linderbaum, or say somebody gets Linderbaum. That's just one more defensive player, I think, that the Bengals might be looking at. But just to get back to Linderbaum real quick, he's always looking for work. He's always able to block guys at the second level. When you hear people say blocking at the second level, you'll see him sometimes sometimes in some of these clips, engaging with safeties, just looking for work, getting to that second level, finding that linebacker after he gets off his first man, couple pancakes here and there. He's all about balance, and that's one thing that's really good about him. One thing that I see on Zion, and I like to keep it realistic. These guys that I'm naming are guys that I feel like might be on the board or they'll be very close. Zion, a lot of people like the way he plays, and he's got like a nastiness to his game. But one of the things I think they'll be able to fix up really quick with communication is just communicating on stunts. He has a problem with stunts a lot of these times, and they're kind of marking some of these pressures on him. He doesn't have that many pressures, I think, even at him, but like the 4 or 5 that I think I saw, they're just a product of stunts. And one thing that he'll do too is sometimes he'll get unbalanced with his technique as well. So those are but aside from that, if he was there at 31, I wouldn't be upset with that too. For the guy that's just saying, and I'm not running away from drafting offensive line at 31. It just has to be the right guy. Zion, I think, is the right guy. Linderbaum is the right guy. The third guy, you could go with what you was about to say. God,
yeah, they got Jamari Salyer. He's another dude that's out there. Believe it or not, he's compared to Quentin Spain, so that's another option at guard. Kenyon Green, he comes in actually like the lowest PFF.
Really?
Take that with a grain of salt. It's 72, so it's not bad. But I compare him to Isaiah Wayne and Richie Incognito.
I like Kenyon Green. I like him. I like him better than Zion. And only reason why I like Kenyon Green better than Zion is because with Kenyon, you can move him around a little bit. And Kenyon can play like different spaces on the offensive line. So that's the great thing about Kenyon Green. He's got some flaws in his game. I mean, all these guys that we're talking about drafting the 5th, 6th offensive line guy coming off the board. So you're not getting the best of the best. If the kid that I just said, I came from NC State, somebody like that fell down to you in some crazy world or something like that, yeah, like that's plug and play day one starter. All these guys I'm talking about, they all will start for the Bengals right now, period.
Yeah, facts. So when you talk about the center aspects, it's kind of somewhat limited here. They've only actually, like, the most conference that they picked from has been the SEC. The weight generally tends to be 309. Age is once again 22, 23. You're talking about weight-wise, 301 to 319.
Okay.
Height, 6'3", 6'4". So the people that I found that
we're good.
Fit that, Kenyon Green, Jamari Salyer, depending on what they do.
Does it talk about 40 times?
No, I'm not looking at 40 times.
All right.
Like that. Right. I do have the relative athletic scores for average. And so sometimes I don't like using those because for like Jackson Carmen last year, he didn't test. So there's literally nothing there for him. But if you take him out of the equation for the guards, it's actually an 8.02. That's the most athletic position that the Bengals generally draft. When you go to the center, it's kind of crazy because that's like the least athletic position that they draft. It's like a 5.28.
And centers in general will be like that, you know, and that's what makes Linderbaum and Creed Humphreys of the world special. That's what makes Jensen special. He's more athletic. The difference, the knock that you're going to hear on Bozeman, he came into the league a little younger. That's the center from the Ravens. He came into the league a little bit younger. So a lot of people feel like he's still ascending. And so if they were to get Bozeman or something, they're banking on the fact that they still believe that he's ascending. But keep in mind, he was drafted in the 6th round, and part of that is because of the lack of athleticism.
Facts. I'm gonna get into some super chats real quick. My man Nandon, do we pick a receiver in the mid rounds, them 40s? I feel like that's a good point to like pick one because I feel like we still need wide receiver 4. So mid rounds, I can see it. What about you, John?
I can see it 100%. I mean, I'm not disappointed with Mike Thomas or Trent Taylor, but if Trent Taylor, what did we hear at the conference the other day? Darren Simmons was saying they want a punt returner that is going to put the fear of God in people. That's not Trent Taylor. Trent Taylor is super short-handed. I like Trent Taylor. I know it's a small sample size, but the 2-point conversion, some of the stuff that I felt like even in the practice clips and a lot of different things that we saw throughout the year, I feel like he's shifty enough to do some cool stuff. The kid that I want everybody to kind of keep their eye on, he ran a 4.3 yesterday at the wide receiver position. He's from Memphis. He played at Memphis. I sent him to you earlier today. His name, I had to go back in our thing, but the kid from Memphis, he probably would be like a mid-round guy.
Calvin Austin.
Calvin Austin the third. So that's one of the guys that's a little shiftier, Deontay Johnson type mode, can get in out of breaks. He has a lot of film on him catching contested footballs. But yeah, that's the type of guys that I think that they should probably be targeting. The crazy thing about this draft, though, in the mid rounds, there's going to be some big guys like Auden Tate, like guys that are faster than Austin, that are faster than Auden Tate. So that's something else. I don't know what the Bengals are looking for. A red zone threat. You got to think if you get like Gronk or somebody like that, you're not looking for that guy. You're looking for the shifty, quick guy that can run a 40 time of 4.4. So
yeah, there's another kid, Tyquan Thornton, 4.28 that he ran yesterday, 6'2", 181.
They originally put that at a 4.21, right?
Wow, that's crazy.
Did you know that?
Nah, I did not know that.
But his unofficial sound was 4.21. I'm sorry, tell me the rest of his stuff.
But Tyquan Thornton, he came from Baylor. He's a guy that shows a lot of separation on tape. He also is pegged as a special teamer as well. So I don't know if they're talking about as far as returns or if they're talking about as a gunner, but that could be a guy that could be doing something that could put the fear of God in anybody as a returner. So I think definitely Tyquan could possibly be one of those guys. But yeah, pull up. You have to go ahead.
Pull up that Amari Cooper super chat.
Yeah, Amari Cooper super chat. All right, 1 second. I'm gonna get to West ENC as the Bengals sign Njoku and Njoku goes off. It's already being reported from Mary Kay Cabot that he's returning to the Browns. So I wouldn't put too much stock into that. Amari Cooper getting released by Dallas from our man Landon McLeod for $199. I honestly was kind of shocked about this. This is what I actually called you about earlier, Zim, because I felt like I knew that Amari was a potential cap casualty. But what I thought that they would do is I thought that they would restructure his money and try to find a way to keep him, which is why I was like, all right, they're going to keep Amari. So, like, that's why I kind of came to the Tyron Smith thing, because I'm like, if they got a choice between keeping Amari and DeMarcus Lawrence or Tyron, like, I'm like, all right, they're going to probably keep him. But today they come out and they say that he's getting released, which you already know from reading that article. That's what teams do when they want to trade somebody, right?
Yes, sir.
So it seems like Amari Cooper could get traded, but if that's the case, that brings them to, I think, like $6 million over the cap, because at first they were negative 22 mil. So they must have done a restructure before to get them to negative 13. And now if they cut Amari, that gives them like $3 million in cap space, but they still need more. So I'm like, all right, are you guys willing to take a trade for Tyron or La'el Collins as well? Because those are other guys that were cap casualties listed over there, and they still have to also sign Michael Gallup, right? So if you are letting
and he's coming off an injury, and the other guy that I think I like better than Gallup is the fourth wide receiver, Cedric Wilson.
I like Cedric Wilson for them as well.
I like Cedric Wilson for us. I don't think we will be able to afford him. Cedric Wilson is a lot better than what I ever thought he was. I learned about him, I guess, through fantasy football more so, because I was kind of like saying, man, Dallas 4 couldn't hang with our 4, but I was wrong. Cedric Wilson is really, really, really good.
Cedric Wilson is definitely a dog for sure.
But I don't know what he would command on. But he would never come to the Bengals and be a fourth option. But that's the mold of the guy that I think they need. Guy with speed, short-handed, can go in the slot, can go outside. Cedric Wilson is exactly the type of wide receiver that the Bengals need. like
But at the end of
interchangeable.
the day, though, Dallas has to keep somebody more than just CeeDee Lamb, right? So that
Right.
means that they have to open that space up because even if they trade Amari and don't have to pay that, they're still only sitting at, I think, about like $3 million over the cap. So there's no way that you can pay Michael Gallup if you do plan on doing that without freeing up some more of that money. Could that come in the form of like DeMarcus Lawrence? Yeah, but you got $5 million sitting right over there with Tyron Smith if you move on from him. So I think that's going to be like super interesting, and you're going to see a lot of that around the league this year. And we kind of touched on it last year with cap casualties. That's not the only one. And if Amari Cooper at 27 years old can be a cap casualty for somebody, nobody is safe. Like anybody else out there that's like teetering on that line, like a Taylor Lewan or like a Jake Matthews, like nobody is safe. So just keep that in mind because this free agent pool is going to get added to. The one thing, though, I want to touch on before we get back to these super chats, though, is tackle. Tackle, the average age is 23. The relative athletic score, the average is 7.46. So not the 8.02 like guard, but pretty close. You're looking at anybody like generally they have an average weight of 315 pounds. The smallest that Duke Tobin has ever drafted that's played for the Bengals has been 298. The biggest has been 342. The average height is usually 6'6". So they like them tall boys when it comes to
what about 6'7"? Because I feel like that Kellen Deesh because he runs that because he ran that 4'9".
They go from anywhere. The minimum is 6'4", the max is 6'8". So anywhere within that range, they can go. The average just is 6'6", but they can take somebody 6'7". They can take somebody 6'8". But if you were to say they'll play somebody at tackle that's 6'3" or 6'2", they're not going to do it, at least based off of their draft history. They would probably have them at like guard or center or something like that. But that's what they have for the conferences. 5 from the SEC, 3 from the Big 12, 2 from the Pac-12.
So yeah, because Deesh played at Arizona State. That is a guy that I want people to kind of keep an eye on because to me, if we're talking about the future of this offensive line, I understand that we're about to maybe go do something where we go get a Tunsil or get a tackle or something that maybe is a little bit longer in the tooth at 28, close to 30, somewhere in that ballpark, right? I think Deontay Smith represents the future for the Bengals, where you bring them back by the time that this run that we're on right now is over and you go pay Joe Burrow the most money in the history of football. Then you come back with Deontay Smith, 3 years from now, and that's your starting right tackle or something, right? And then you on the other end, you got to go get that other guy. And I think Deesh is a guy to really keep an eye on because he's a little undersized based off of what you just told me. But he's at 302, I believe. So he could
still fit in. If he's 3, so he's 6'7", 302.
Yep.
Yeah, they'll still take him. So
quick. If you see him too,
but the smallest that they've taken, they've drafted somebody that was 298 pounds before. Right. Somehow between 1999 to now, Duke Tobin has drafted somebody that age. So Deesh does actually fit in there. And then you talk about the Pac-12. They've taken 2 from the Pac-12. So he definitely fits that mold for sure.
I like him as a 3rd round pick. If he was there to be in the 3rd, I actually wouldn't be opposed to them trading back in the 2nd and then getting 2 guys. And if they came back with Deesh or something at the end, because I really feel like the board is going to show you defense on this first pick. But I think one thing that they could make up for it is by coming back and getting a stud guard that we're not thinking maybe a Zion Johnson or somebody like that falls a little bit. I don't know. But say they come back and get that guy. But the icing on the cake to me where you walk out of the draft and feel like you won the draft is to come back and get a Deech and say this is probably our tackle for the future and we're all going to treat him as such. If we can get him in the Deontay Smith program that we got right now, where this is the first guy in the building, he works really hard. I've read a lot of stuff on Deech. I haven't seen any tape on him yet, but the 40 time made me kind of pay more attention to him. And then just looking at his frame and everything like that, I feel like year one, that you would just bull rush the hell out of him. But there's not too many ends that I could think of in the NFL that will be able to get around him as quick as some of these big oversized tackles that are kind of making, kind of their heyday in the NFL right now. So it's a tough conversation on like how you want to go in the draft, but that's a guy to keep a name on. I think like we were saying earlier, like Zion Johnson, I think is a guy. Deach is a guy that definitely
Kennard, you got Cross.
The only reason why I hate Kennard is because if you got Kennard, it would be at 31, and Kennard isn't ready for the NFL. The length of his arms, I think, are a little too short. I got to go back and make sure on that. But I don't think his arm length meets the threshold that I would want it to be at. I wrote a note on that. But Kennard is not ready to start in the NFL. So if you draft him at 31, most Bengals fans are going to say, yeah, that's our guy. We got him. Like, he's not ready. He about as ready as, like, Jackson Carman was. Like, he's Jackson Carman 2.0.
He's Jackson Carman. This is what I have on him for, like, the strengths. He has an oak tree frame with proportional thickness throughout, premium wingspan, and an enormous hands. His weaknesses are oversetting needs to be monitored and corrected, lackadaisical approach in his pass punch. So, yeah, like you said, potentially had some issues there. Charles Cross is one that they got down for tackle. Marquise Hayes is another. This Abraham Lucas dude is interesting because he meets the threshold for guard and tackle for them, and they compare him to Bobby Massey. He's got an 81 Pro Football Focus grade. So yeah, they got some other dudes on here. I also got like a list of like strengths and weaknesses that I could talk about too, but.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, 34 and 5'8". That ain't bad.
Hand size, his hands are huge. 11 and a half.
6'5", 320.
That's crazy.
Okay. No, I got that part off.
No, you good. I mean, whatever you feel about the dude is what it is, because the tape don't lie. So, like, if you feel that way,
I don't know why he plays like that. Like where he struggled to get reach blocks. That's the only thing that I saw like on it. Like he struggled to reach.
So the other dude that's interesting that I kind of talked about, the Abraham Lucas dude, he went to, it looks like Washington State, played in the Pac-12, 322. Looks like he's kind of tall as well. He's got the 34-inch arms. It says that he was a durable 4-year starter with impressive body composition. He has a background as a high school basketball player, so we will be getting another hooper to hoop with the Migos, but that's neither here nor there. The issue, though, is they say that he has too many false start penalties in 2021. He's heavy-legged and lumbering in the run game, so that's some of his issues that he has.
Speaking of the Cowboys, have you heard about us like getting being the other guy that we signed is Connor Williams, who is a very penalty heavy guy?
Connor Williams. Yeah. See, here's my thing about penalties.
I went back to free agency. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I'm glad you brought this up because I wouldn't mind Connor Williams because he only gave up 1 sack on the season, right? But penalties are something, right? But to me, penalties are something that can be coached. Like you can improve on penalties, like strength and speed and athleticism. You can't coach that. So like for me, if somebody has a penalty problem, that's something I feel like can be corrected, right? But if I got 34-inch arms and you need somebody with 36, I can't correct that. There's no coaching that you can really do to change that. So, and this doesn't go for Connor Williams, just anybody in general. If that's something, I feel like that's something that can be coached and worked on, right? Versus something that can't be changed. So for Connor Williams, I wouldn't mind it. I wouldn't give him a gang of money or anything, but like I think I had posted him or somehow he came up and somebody was like, he was the worst person on Dallas's line. And I'm like, Dallas has a really good line. Like you got Tyron Smith, you got Zach Martin, you got Lyle Collins. Like if he's the worst guy out of that bunch, Connor McGovern is good too. Like all of these guys on PFF are like 80 and up. So like for me, with him, we would
kill for anybody on the Cowboys line.
Yeah, we'd take anybody on the Cowboys line, like for sure. But yeah, with Connor Williams, I think he would be like a sneaky person that I'd be like, all right, cool. I would feel confident with him, but I would feel like Frank Pollock would be able to work with him to kind of get some of those penalties and stuff like that. So when I see that about this kid, Abraham Lucas, that's not something that worries me, like, especially with us coming from playing football. Like, the penalties thing, that could kind of be corrected. Like, you can find out what counts you actually going on and stuff like that. Now, could it mean that if he's still doing it, that there's some kind of learning difficulty? Maybe. But I just feel like you can kind of work with that in a sense, because it wasn't too long ago that we used to have guys jumping off sides. Some of those guys are still here, but they're not doing it anymore. So that just tells me that maybe the coaching is better now.
Right. Before we close this out, let me give people a sneak preview. I could go first, so you can go first. We're going to get into. We started this. I want everybody to know. We started the free agent mock simulator, but last year we were the first one to do it, and then some other people followed up after that, right? But just giving people a sneak preview. Do you want to go first, or I go first? What will be like an idea, just quick overview of what you would want to do?
You already know the first move that I'm making on the free agent simulator is I'm trading for Tyron. You know it. Him or La'el Collins. Somebody is coming to the Natty, man. Like, that's where it probably starts with me. But you guys know that by now. But that would probably be my first one. I'm probably going to end up trading for an offensive tackle. That doesn't mean I'm done with O-line after that, right? Because you still got free agency. You still had a draft. But that's probably where my plan kind of starts at. And then it's going to be hard to simulate, I guess, like people that are cap casualties. I guess they still do have that in there as well. But that's probably where it starts for me. But the biggest surprise, I think, that'll come from majority of the audience and the listeners is that my sole focus will not just be offensive line. It's going to be a part of it, but there's going to be It's got to be
the focal point, though. I feel like a lot, at least for me, I feel like a lot of moves are centered around the future of being able to sign, T. Higgins and Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase every year is a factor every year, because I can't lose those three. And then aside from that, it's really about like protecting Joe Burrow first, and then after that, I want to make this defense. I was telling you this earlier today, and a lot of people might shoot us, like they might poo-poo this away. Is the fact that I was watching a quick like overview of the Legion of Boom, and if you go back and look at the Legion of Boom, there's a lot of similarities of how they started and what the Bengals currently have now. Like Awuzie, of course, we're being like Richard Sherman. We still believe Awuzie is still like entering. He's like currently at his prime or entering his prime. Right. And then you got Bates being,
Earl Thomas,
and then Cam Von Bell being Cam Chancellor. And then they always had another corner that you might know, you don't know, whatever, could be Eli Apple of the world. It could, and then the kicker is this: Trey Flowers came from that, and he was at the tail end of that. He was the other guy, and it just goes to show you like how a defense kind of can get started with that. But the one thing that the Legion of Boom, now granted, Russell Wilson is a dog, but I don't think the Legion of Boom was ever aided with weapons on the opposite side of the field as well, which is the scary part for the Bengals. So starting off, just sign Jesse Bates, get my Legion of Boom. They call it money on the floor, get money crew. I forgot whatever it's called, something like that. Mm-hmm. Get them together. Sign. I'm on board with Jensen. Give me Jensen. Sign him. Give me another guy, whether it be in the form of Tyron. I'm not gonna make mine as exact. Give me Tyron or Tyron level of a tackle. Like, it has to be a guy like on this line. Like, I don't care what they do, whether they do it through the draft or whatever. They have to have one elite alpha Trent Williams level big time dog on the line. If that's Tyron, if that's Tunsil, whatever, give it to me. It doesn't matter. Then I go into the draft. I come out the draft with two guys on offense. The two guys that I come out on offense with are going to be a guy that could potentially battle for the guard position, and another guy is a guy that I'm thinking about as my future tackle behind Jonah or behind whoever on the right-hand side. Doesn't matter. Come out the draft with those two. Come out of the draft, catch me one of them cap casualty offensive line guys, and then I'm set with offensive line. So everything else is just BPA at that point. That's and another thing too. I'm totally sold on the 6 corners that I think we have on our radar. I think as Bengals fans or just fans of whatever, when you get to 31, I just think one or two of those guys 100% will be there at 31. I also think there's 2 or 3 edge guys 100% will be there at 31. I can't wait till we start talking about edge because edge is another one.
There's some cap casualties out there on that edge market, depending on what you want to do, that are gonna look nice.
Right. So to me, that's the ultimate plan is like start off like that's it. I know I'm not as exact. We'll get into more exacts when we get into the simulator, but that's the plan, and that's kind of my focus, how I'm looking at the draft. So it's like if anyone catches us in an episode or I'm in an episode and I'm not leaning towards offensive line heavy in the draft, it's because we went and got 2 studs before we even went to the draft. And when I come out of the draft, I'm banking on one of them cap casualty dudes. I'm going to get one of them. Morgan Moses was the same way last year. Was just a cap casualty that got, whatever. They let him go, and then it is what it is. Another thing that might help us in our decision is who likes barbecue the most. If one of those guys like Midwest Best Barbecue better than the other one, I'm going to probably lean with that guy. If you guys haven't had a chance, go to Midwest Best Barbecue in Loveland, Ohio. Please make sure you check them out. They got the best food in town, Uno wings, all types of, lemon pepper, anything that your tongue tickles that's fancy. Go ahead and go to Midwest Best Barbecue and check them out. But a lot of offensive line is like, how much can you put down a plate? Can you clean up the plate? Can you knock out the sauce? Can you get the fixings? Can you knock out the mashed potatoes? So I need some dogs up front.
No, that's facts. Another person I definitely wouldn't mind taking. I don't know if he's going to be there, but if Andrew Booth is there for sure in our mock, I'm definitely taking him.
I'm running.
When I say O-line, don't get me wrong. I still plan on signing, trading like 2 or 3 guys, drafting maybe a guy. But the one thing that I also have to treat as a priority is the 3 technique spot for the defense, right? Like you're walking into a situation where that position, if you guys remember 2 years ago, it got hit really hard when Geno Atkins was down and we had a lot of injuries there. So don't forget the other sides of this as well. In that corner position, that second corner, depending on what happens there, especially with them losing so many, those are going to be other positions that I might prioritize as well. Maybe not as top tier as offensive line, but I got to make sure that I got a guy I can depend on at least 3 tech. If it's BJ Hill, cool. If not, but you'll have to see. Yeah. I wanted to run through some of the cap casualties real quick.
Did you see Hilton? He was out there working to get JC Jackson earlier today too.
JC Jackson, he's worked to try to get.
I feel like that money gonna be too crazy though. Like I'm gonna tell you, the Bengals are not about to compete with nobody. They'll sign their own and make their own the highest paid, as they've done before with like Dalton, Carson Palmer. All these guys got big contracts. Right. They'll sign their own because they're not competing against anybody. They're gonna look at the market. They're smart in that way.
But as far as the cap casualties go though, Brian Bulaga. You got Taylor Lewan out there. You got D Ford. Like there's some names. Bradley Roby. There's some names out there that could get cut. So I know somebody has said they wanted to expand on on that aspect. Just remember that there's still guys that could be cut, and those are some notable guys out there. Miles Jack. Like I know we straight at linebacker, but that's just letting you know like there's gonna be some other big names.
That money, right?
Potentially hitting this free agency pretty soon.
Right. Bradbury is a one.
Bradbury is one. I kind of like Bradbury.
I love Bradbury.
A 2-year deal for me because he's 28, 29, 30.
He's set to make 13.4 and a signing bonus of $3 million.
I think 21 million is if they keep him. There's no way that they're gonna pay him 21 million. So if they cut him, they eat like 8 million, but they save 12. It's like they saved 12 because I was just talking to somebody on Twitter about that.
His dead cap hit, they would lose 9.
Yeah, but they saved 12. If they keep him, they gotta pay him 21 million. So that's a lot of people are like, yeah, the dead cap number is bad, but then it's either pay the dead cap of 9 or pay 21. And that's where they're like, ugh. They got some tough decisions to make.
I like Bradbury, but that's where the draft. Like a lot of this is still BPA. It's some corners that we'll talk about too that'll still be available in a second too that I think would give a corner like Eli a run for his money, like for sure. So there's some guys that we're going to talk about, but I just think in that first round, I think a guy that could carry you for the next 4 years is going to be sitting right there in your face. Like we see it every year. Like that at that point, end of that first round, that second round guy, like those guys come out, like think about where was Pat Surtain drafted, like 17, 18. Like some of these guys I'm just thinking about and just recently don't really, they're not top 10 picks. You know what I'm saying? Like, so back half of that first round, you looked at the guy Elam, Kyer the other day. McDuffie is a guy that could fall. He's a little undersized. He's 5'9". I'm gonna tell you another guy that really is his combine is so important. His name is Joyner. It's the guy opposite side of McDuffie at Washington. That kid right there can ball too. But the reason why it's hard for people to get a high grade on him is because he had limited amount of snaps. So
one of the dudes, somebody just mentioned this dude in the chat, and I talked to you about him. I haven't watched him yet.
I said Jordan. I said Jordan. I meant Gordon.
Somebody mentioned that, and they was like, everybody forgets that he was like he won the award for like one of the best corners in the nation because everybody's talking about Sauce. Kobe Bryant, I can't wait to dig into the film on him because I want to see what his tape looks like. But I think he might be a guy that might be under the radar. If he won an award for the best corner in the nation, like I heard this morning, that's kind of crazy. So I kind of want to see what Kobe has to bring to the table too at a UC, because they got to know if they can't get Sauce, they got to be looking at the other dude that's in their backyard. But
that's round 2, 3 though. But that's the guy though. That's a perfect example of a guy that would give Eli a run for his money. That's a guy I wouldn't mind in our scheme, considering you got the new Legion of Boom around him. The reason why you got the Legion of Boom around him, it makes it so that this guy just has to be a zone press corner that just sticks to his assignment year one. It really makes it that simple. And of course, teams think that they'll pick on it, but I think throughout the season, the Bengals, like you remember the Eli Apple pick, he makes a play on it because a lot of teams say, well, that's the guy we're going to go get. Okay, that's the guy we're going to get, but that's the guy that Bates is going to make sure I'm over there every single time you get over there. And it kind of works in our favor. And if you play with us and go over to the other side of the Woozier, we feel confident in him with a one-on-one situation. So a lot of this is like, if you could get a guy that you think can do that and then some and make a play on the ball too, that can actually catch a football as well, I mean, sky's the limit for the defense, bro. And that's why I think at 31, the corner is just so enticing, especially when you look at how much corners are going for at this free agent market right now.
Facts, bro. So that is going to wrap up the show. I know y'all probably are still watching the Combine. We're going to be at you at your neck next week with more draft information, more mocks and off season and all of that. Thank you guys for tuning in. This has been the Orange is the New Black podcast. And of course, we're going to end this with a yes, Sirski.
Hello, world. What separated your deep ball from everybody else?
My deep ball, it has a little secret sauce to it, man.
Never get too high, never get too low, but just keep moving.
The whole story is Carlos never beat me in any kind of sports in high school.